Hello there. I just wanted to make another video about the Wheel of the Elements and the elemental archetypes, but I wanted to focus on a particular theme within it, and that is the primacy of the cardinal archetypes, which form the cardinal cross in uh, the in the wheel. And the cardinal archetypes don't really work in the same way as the other archetypes. There were archetypes that Brankowen calls the quadrant archetypes. Yeah. Um, the thing is, the quadrant archetypes they're almost like they're moving archetypes and doing archetypes in a sense. Yeah. They are they have a very dynamic function. They circulate energy in a very specific ways and in very specific patterns, most notably in the form of an inner and outer journey, which very much affects our relationship to the inner life and the capacity to be effective and balanced and fulfilled in the outer life. And so there's two journeys, there's two sets of these quadrant archetypes, and the open quadrant archetypes are concerned with the inner journey and the inner life, and they are the fool, the child, the sage, and the hearth priestess or queen. Yeah, and then there are four closed quadrant archetypes, uh, which are concerned with the outer journey, um, and they are the warrior, the matriarch, the patriarch, and the actress. So these are the quadrant archetypes. Yeah. But then you have the cardinal archetypes as well, the cardinal cross. Now, the cardinal cross consists in the archetypes of the magician, the enchantress, the jester, and Mother Nature. And they form the cardinals of the four elements. So, although all of the archetypes have two elements, one preponderant and one a kind of secondary element, so called, yeah, uh, you still find that with the cardinal archetypes, uh, uh, each of them is associated especially with one element, i.e., their dominant element. So the magician is the cardinal of air, the enchantress is the cardinal of water, the jester is the cardinal of fire, and Mother Nature is the cardinal of earth. Now, what I wanted to really kind of flag up is just how important these cardinals are, and it's one way of looking at this system, yeah, because in the old days when I used to just follow sort of like Tammo and Richard's view on the wheel, um, it was as if you had simply 12 variations around a circle, all of them personalities, all of them ways of being, all of them states of consciousness. And there are validities to that, yeah. But in a sense, they were almost like as if they were all equal. It was very much a round table, yeah. Um, but with I think the insights that Bran Collingwood has come up with are very important because they give you a sense of the inner dynamics of the wheel, and they are tremendously important for working out how this actually works and how things can go wrong and how things can be put right. So it's tremendously valuable. And key to that, well, one of the keys to that is the functioning of the cardinals. There are different ones, and I strongly recommend you reading Bran Collingwood's book, which I'll put a link to in the description of the video. But there are a number of ways that, for instance, the archetypes all support each other, relate to each other, yeah? But a really interesting way of looking at it is to look at the cardinal archetypes and to look at the cardinal cross and to see them almost as sort of like irrigating sources of the energy that feed the other archetypes. And if that energy is being pumped out into the other archetypes in the right way, then the stuff starts to circulate and it starts to work well. So, for instance, oh, and there's one other thing to remember here, and that is that the Certainly the elements really relate to each other in a very supportive fashion. Yeah. So for instance, fire really needs air and air really needs fire. So you tend to find that for that reason, the cardinal of air and the cardinal of fire are very important to each other. They really need each other. They really need to be in good relationship with each other. Similarly, we find that water really supports earth and earth really supports water. So their cardinals really support each other and are really important to each other. Mother Nature needs the enchantress, enchantress really needs Mother Nature. So the sort of thing that we can get from that is that you see that if you have a problem with your feelings, your water, for whatever reason, yeah, it's going to impact, and your sense of soul. It's going to impact Mother Nature, the Mother Nature archetype, yeah. If the Mother Nature archetype is somehow depleted of water, if she's depleted of water and dysfunctional, then she's not able to give her earth energy to all the archetypes that she gives the earth energy to, and they will suffer accordingly, most especially the archetypes closest to her, which have earth as their primary element. So that's the matriarch and the hearth priestess or queen. So you can see things in this way. Now, what that does is that you can even see it schematically. You have the war, it's as if the earth energy contracts away from these archetypes that Mother Nature would normally feed with earth energy, yeah. And so it's as if they go looking for it. But going looking for it, they start going backwards, on a backwards direction in their journey. And what that means is that the closed archetypes, which are outer world archetypes, become introverted neurotically, and the inner world archetypes, such as the hearth priestess or queen or the fool, they sort of get thrown out into the world in a way which doesn't recognize their value and which they can't cope with, and it doesn't work. So you see, they end up in the wrong worlds, and they end up with the wrong worlds because they're not getting their primary element fed, and that in some ways, in looking at it this way, that comes down to a malfunction of the cardinal cross. The cardinal cross is central. It's the cardinal cross is almost like four hearts pumping elemental energy into the entire system and circulating it. And so this is one way of looking at it. I mean, we can look at another example of that. For instance, say that there's a problem with air. There's a problem with air. Yeah. Now the jester really needs air. Yeah. The jester really needs air. Because he's got fire first, air second. Fire and air need each other. If he's not getting his air, if his air is depleted, his fire is going to contract. Yeah. And the energy that he should be giving out to all the archetypes that he gives fire to, that starts to contract back into him, in a sense. Yeah. And the ones that suffer the most are the ones right close to him, which need fire as their primary element. Yeah. So that is, in this case, the warrior and the fool. And when that happens, they're not getting their fire, and they're, in a sense, schematically going to go looking for the fire. Where should it be coming from? And where it's coming from should be the jester, but the jester isn't giving it to them. But in that searching for what they need out of lack, they're actually going in the wrong direction. Yeah, the warrior starts going in an inward direction, and his anger and his force gets internalized into all sorts of havoc within himself. Yeah, and that becomes very problematic. And the fool starts going in an outward direction, whereby he acts out his foolishness in the world where it actually has consequences. The inner world doesn't have consequences. The inner world is a world of freedom. The fool is at home in the inner world, and he can live there perfectly. But in the outer world, he needs a lot of help. So you can see those are two examples of the cardinal's malfunctioning based upon the cardinal cross not supporting itself, i.e., enchantress and Mother Nature and magician and jester. If the cardinal cross isn't supporting itself, it withdraws its energy from its its dependent archetypes, which are adjacent to those cardinals. Yeah, in other words, the quadrants, but specific parts of the quadrant pattern. Yeah, um, and then you see things get sent in the wrong direction. So that's that's one way of looking at the actual wheel. You start seeing these structures within it, which are dynamic structures, uh, and then you can start picking up on things and to come up with examples like from real life. Yeah, for instance, you could be looking at somebody and you could see there's a characteristic problem because of how a person is and what they're describing. They might have a specific problem, say, with that looks like it's relating to the fool archetype, that's relating to the fool archetype going backwards, whatever that is in the person's life, that they're that they are out of control, that they are acting out, that they are having real problems actually fitting into life responsibly. It could be all sorts of things. Or maybe they've got a problem with the hearth priestess, yeah, which is being turned into the slave, which is, or employee, which is like a backwards negative version of the hearth priestess, because it's a very useful archetype. Now, wherever it is, wherever you're saying this, have a look at what the nearest cardinal, the state of the nearest cardinal, yeah? Because that's one way of looking at it. And there are a number of different ways of looking at it, but it's one way of looking at it, yeah? So I'm not saying this is the only way, but this is one way of looking at it. Look to the nearest cardinal, yeah, which it is dependent upon for its primary energy. So in the case of the fool, it would be the jester. In the case of the hearth priestess or queen, it would be Mother Nature. Yeah. Look to that. Also look to the archetype on the other side of it, because they tend to do double acts in a way. Yeah. When fool is going backwards, there's quite often warrior somewhere going backwards there as well. It's somewhere in the picture or the past or the story, if not now, then at a certain point, there's something going on there often. With the hearth priestess, often seems to be the matriarch seems to sort of like come in there into the story somewhere, or somebody playing the part of the matriarch in their childhood, say, or what have you. Yeah, but look at both the archetypes. Yeah, who are either side of the nearest cardinal. Yeah. Similarly, look, if it was air, then like, look, if you had a patriarch type of problem, look at the state of the magician. Also look at the state of the sage, yeah, and look what crops up there. But very importantly, look across the circle from that cardinal to its opposing cardinal, i.e., its polarity, yeah, which will be another cardinal, and which will flag up its complementary element, yeah, because if that cardinal is malfunctioning, for instance, if it's the gesture that's malfunctioning, yeah, look across to the magician, look across to what's going on with its supply of air, what's the quality of air it's had or is getting, if it's Mother Nature that seems to be afflicted, somebody's nurturing earth energy is sort of missing, yeah. Look across to the enchantress. Look at what's going on emotionally at a deep level, at a soul level. Because if you want to, if you want this to actually kind of rebalance itself, if you've got Mother Nature, which is depleted in water, you need to bring in water. You need to bring in soul. If you've got a jester, which is afflicted, and it's missing air, and so it's withdrawn its fire from its dependent archetypes, you need to bring in air. It needs space. It needs that openness and space to be able to burn properly again, and to give of itself in the way that it needs to, and to be happy. Yeah. So look at these things. Look at these patterns in this way. So You see a particular archetypal area where there's a problem. Look to the nearest cardinal to see what could be going on with that energy. Also look to the other adjacent archetype to that cardinal, yeah, to see if that's coming in there at all, because they do tend to work together, it seems. Um, and also look from that cardinal across to its complementary cardinal. So again, for Mother Nature, it's the enchantress and vice versa, and for the magician, it's the jester and vice versa. Because these energies feed each other. When they feed each other properly, they circulate properly. When they circulate properly, the archetypes go in the right direction, on the right journeys, and things start settling and unraveling and working, and things start to move. So that's just what I wanted to focus on today. I hope that's interesting and of some sort of help.